Have you ever wanted to delve into the world of interwar British society? Explore life aboard an airship with your trusty dog companion to solve the mysteries of your forgotten childhood and see what caused major European countries to lose their minds and start a moral panic, the likes of which had not been seen since the first Mortal Kombat release? Well then, I have a game for you. Rule of Rose is a 2006 PlayStation 2 release, developed by Punchline, and published by Sony in Japan, Altus in North America, and 505 Games in the EU. While it's labeled as a survival horror game, the gameplay and design hold very little similarity to other survival horror games, like the genre-defining Resident Evil. The game has hardly any focus on combat, instead focusing on storycraft, atmosphere, and puzzle solving at its core. It would be much better defined as a psychological thriller than a survival horror game. Labeling aside, you assume the role of Jennifer, a teenage girl. You are on a bus traveling to an unspecified destination when a boy gives you a handmade book. You open it only to find that the confusing story is incomplete. Confused by the gift, you follow the little boy as he runs off the bus at the next stop. Before you can catch up with him, the bus drives off, abandoning you at a nondescript bus stop on a rural road in the middle of the night. And thus your adventures begin. You follow the boy up a small path, leading past a work shed and to an old, run-down looking mansion. The house seems vaguely familiar to Jennifer, but she can't quite remember why. After gaining entrance, she discovers that the mansion is an old orphanage, but in a horrible state of disrepair. You explore the orphanage, searching for the boy, finally finding him in the attic. He hands you another chapter of the book to read, then joyfully announces that the funeral is now ready to begin. Driven on by sounds of a dog barking in distress, Jennifer makes her way to the courtyard of the mansion, where she is thrown into a wooden box and abducted by children that seem to inhabit the dilapidated orphanage. Weird enough yet? Oh, just you wait. You then wake up in a nondescript airship cabin, tied to a support beam, with no explanation how you got there, and no prompts on what to do next. The boy from the bus speaks with Jennifer over an intercom system, and announces himself simply as the Prince, and demands that you bring gifts to something he calls the Society. Failure to do so will lead to your death, he casually informs you. With your restraints then cut, you are informed that you are now a member of something called the Aristocrat Club, but you are its lowest-ranking member. You are now free to explore your surroundings and try to piece together where you are, who you are, why you are here, and why you are a captive of the mysterious Aristocrat Club. In the corner of the room, you will find a vague stick figure-esque statue which refers to itself as the Bucket Knight. These you will find throughout the game, as they serve as not only your save points, but also the game's hint system. But in this game, even the hints can be more than a little cryptic. These, along with often short, non-vocal cutscenes, will guide your exploration of the airship. Early on in your exploration of the ship, you find and rescue a dog that's been tied up in a cargo hold. Using a collar you discovered in a shed by the bus stop, you name him Brown, and he becomes your companion going forward. This partnership is actually a key gameplay mechanic, as you can task Brown to sniff out for clues and follow the scent of certain objects. His tracking abilities are essential to finding key items to solve the various puzzles and plot locations throughout the game. He can also be tasked to sniff out items for health, stronger weapons, and even bonus items that will award you different outfits for subsequent playthroughs. These items are often in areas that are not essential to the plot, thus prompting you to do more exploration of areas off the main story path. While fans of more traditional survival horror games might find the combat weak or clunky, and the speed of Jennifer to be way too slow, when you think about it, her limitations fit right in with who you are as a character and the settings in which you find yourself. Having a timid, very confused teenage girl sprinting down corridors, blasting dual-wielded pistols, and suplexing her enemies would not just be drastically out of place, it would change the whole tone and narrative of the experience. Instead, you are armed with the most basic of melee-style weapons, ranging from cutlery and kitchen utensils to work implements such as shovels and sledgehammers. All items that feel perfectly reasonable to find in your location. In your adventure, you will encounter a variety of boss-type characters that you must defeat for the story to progress. But the most abundant enemies are little childlike imps. These imps come dressed in a variety of animal-themed pantomime-style costumes. For example, goats, rabbits, or fish, just to name a few. With each animal variation having their own form of attack and defense. But for the most part, you are not required to defeat them, or even fight them to progress in the story. Which is good because even though they are little and fairly weak, they come after you in groups that can be hard to manage with your very minimal combat skills. Running away is a key combat strategy, which is in perfect alignment with Jennifer's personality, physique, and mindset. The musical accompaniment throughout the game is all composed and recorded by live performers. It heavily features minimalist orchestral strings and haunting melodies, which fits the tone of the game perfectly. The in-game sounds continue the minimalistic feel to match the mood of the story themes. In all, the game elements meld seamlessly, providing a well-thought-out and cohesive experience. The story itself does very minimal hand-holding, relying on you, the player, to piece together the backstory and meanings of everything yourself. Not all of these story elements are gathered in the main storyline itself, though. This is definitely not a title for the semi-passive, casual playthrough, because you can complete a playthrough without finding all of the information, and be even more confused about the story than when you first wake up on the airship. Thankfully, there's a sort of New Game Plus option. This allows you to replay with some key items already unlocked, and to keep subsequent playthroughs fresh, you can unlock new items and outfits that become available once you get back to the airship. This is a helpful addition, as unless you are following a walkthrough, you most likely will need to play through this game at least twice. This can feel like a grind at times, but the richness of the story's full meaning is more than worth it. Now, the release of this game was fraught with controversy. Originally, Sony did not want to publish the title outside of Japan, for fears that Western audience would either not understand or flat out misconstrue the story themes. So they asked developers to tone down the game for releases outside of Japan, but the developer refused. This led to the game being published as originally intended by the third-party publishers. In the US, Altis escaped public and political scrutiny by mostly slipping in under the radar. The game got a mature rating, which kept it out of major retailers, and was not advertised heavily. But in Europe, it was a totally different story. A small newspaper in Italy called Panorama featured the game on the cover, with the sensationalized and wildly inaccurate title, "The winner is the one who buries the child alive." The writer not only totally misrepresented the game, but also completely fabricated quotes of the developers to make it seem like they intended the game to be, quote, homoerotic and sadistic, as the journalist put it. Now, this article was published long before the game was even released, and solely based off of an out-of-context snippet of the full-motion video used in the announcement trailer of the game. So neither the writer or editor of the article had seen any gameplay themselves, never mind played the game. But that didn't stop Europe from going into full-on moral panic mode about the game. The British media ran with the story, all solely based off of the sensationalized Italian article. The tabloid journalism snowballed from there, making its way all over Europe, and eventually into the political sphere, with even the EU Justice Minister making misguided statements about the game. Politicians in various countries like the UK, France, Australia, and Poland flat out called for the game to be banned. The political fervor was so pervasive that it led the distributor, 505 Games, to cancel the game's release in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. But as they often do, the moral panic eventually subsided, and they were able to release the game for the rest of Europe. Oddly enough, this included Italy, where the whole mess started. Go figure. Now, much later, it was discovered that Guido Castellano, the writer of the original Italian hit piece, had heavily plagiarized the entire article from a random internet forum post jokingly written by some anonymous author. Now, when this finally came to light, it was long after the game's release, mind you. The blowback from the gaming community forced Panorama to purge the article completely from their archives. And even after repeated calls for comments over the years, neither Guido nor Panorama itself have ever responded to the allegations to date. Between how the story is told, the gameplay, the sound design, the controversies, and the fact that this is a costume you can find and wear in gameplay, Rule of Rose most definitely is weird. But those are some of the elements that make it such enjoyable fun. Well, maybe not so much the octopus costume. This is just pure nightmare fuel. Thanks for watching.